What was Ma Fei's ranking? As long as you're in the top 10 of the class, the school won't expel you. Top 10 in the class. But what I want to say is, top 10 in the entire grade. Let me make another bet with you when he leaves the school. He will be the most outstanding student in this school. My name is Ma Haowen. I was once a bridge designer that made the whole city proud. Back then, when the Asian Games torch burned in my palm, even the wind along the riverbank carried a sense of pride. But 7 years ago, that bridge collapsed like a kite, with its string cut, and I fell from the glory of being a torchbearer to a criminal walking into prison in handcuffs. 7 years later, I have served my sentence and been released. I knocked on my ex-wife's door. She looked at me in shock and asked if I was released early or if I'd broken out of prison. I joked with her, saying, I ran out last night. Right now, I'm actually wanted all over the city. I walked into the house, eagerly calling out my son Ma Fei's name, but there was no response. At that moment, Lao Meng came out of the room, looking very smug. Even though he's not Ma Fei's biological father, he thinks he deserves a lot of credit for Ma Fei getting into the top provincial school. Seeing how down and out I looked, he even pretended to ask me with fake concern, "Old Ma? Inside, what do people usually like to drink? You can't get any of that. If you behave well, the guards might reward you with a packet of Banlangan herbal tea." Lao Man burst out laughing when he heard this, and to me, his laughter sounded especially grating. Thinking back, in these past 7 years, has he ever taken my son to visit me even once? The letters I wrote disappeared without a trace. What's even more upsetting is that he actually sent my son to a boarding school. At first, he even self-righteously claimed that boarding school would give him more study time and help him develop self-care skills, which is important in such a competitive society. If he doesn't study hard now, how will he get into a good university in the future? But he completely overlooked the emotional support a child needs most while growing up. We were in the middle of arguing when Lao Meng got a call from the school. They said Ma Fei had gotten into trouble and was about to be expelled. The only good news was that the tuition would be fully refunded. I was extremely anxious and rushed to the school with them. It turned out that Ma Fei had been caught reading a novel at night during rest time, and the school had found out and brought him up on stage. He was harshly criticized and told he was good for nothing, but he acted as if he didn't care at all. I knew that over the years, this child had suffered too many grievances. His grades were always at the bottom. He was used to being criticized, and he had long since lost his confidence. Director Yan, the head of student affairs, saw Ma Fei's indifferent attitude and immediately announced that he would be expelled. What surprised Ma Fei on stage wasn't the expulsion, but the fact that, for the first time in 7 years, he saw me. At that moment, I was waving at him. There was only one thought in my mind. I absolutely could not let my son be abandoned by the school like this. My ex-wife and Lao Meng pleaded earnestly with Director Yan to show mercy. But Director Yan pointed at the wall of honor, which was covered with photos of top students who had graduated from the school. His face was full of pride, and his words were laced with disdain for Ma Fei. He said that students like Ma Fei were like a rat dropping that spoiled a whole pot of porridge. Could Ma Fei ever make it onto that wall one day? That would probably only happen if there was a car accident. Hearing my son belittled like that, I couldn't hold back any longer. I stepped forward and questioned him. Isn't your school's name taken from Li Ji? Even Confucius said that education should be for everyone, without discrimination. But all you care about is the rate of students getting into higher schools. What about the kids who are falling behind? Shouldn't you be finding ways to help them catch up? Instead, you quickly abandon them. How can you call yourself a teacher? What is there left to say about being a true educator? Director Yan was left completely dumbfounded by what I said. When I said my name, a look of disdain immediately appeared on his face. It turned out he had already heard of me, because the collapse of the Dakyao years ago caused a huge scandal in the city, and I became a pariah, someone everyone despised. Ma Fei was also affected because of me, so in Director Yan's eyes, both Ma Fei and I were failures. But I was not willing to accept that. I couldn't just stand by and watch my son be dismissed like that, so I made a bet with Director Yan. I firmly believe my son is the best. I said that by the end of his first year of middle school, Ma Fei would be able to rank in the top 10 of his grade, and that by the time he left the school, he would become the most outstanding student there. Of course, Director Yan didn't believe his ex-wife, and thought I was being unrealistic. He always claimed it was out of love, but kept humiliating and belittling our son. I really couldn't stand it. There is no excuse more terrifying than, "I'm doing this for your own good." If you're really doing it for yourself, then why doesn't Malin stand in front of the mirror and scold himself for 2 hours? Because there was a problem at the factory, Lao Meng and his ex-wife had to rush back to deal with it, so they had no choice but to temporarily leave their son in my care. This was the first time in 7 years that I had spent such a long time with my son. I could feel his unfamiliarity and resentment toward me. He hit me and questioned why I committed a crime, why I never wrote to him. I silently endured his anger, knowing he needed to vent all the grievances he had bottled up over the years. Afterwards, I wanted to treat my son to a big meal, but when I saw the prices on the menu, I realized how little money I had. The days when a bowl of noodles cost just a few cents were long gone. Now, I didn't even have enough for a decent meal. Not wanting to disappoint my son, I had to cancel the beer I had just ordered. Sigh, I didn't even open that beer. I switched it to orange soda instead. Then, let's have 2 bowls of beef noodles, extra cilantro, extra chili, extra garlic sprouts. And please add more noodles and more soup as well. Thank you, bro. Could you just give me 40,000 directly? At that moment, I truly felt ashamed and thought I had failed as a father. I used to think that, with my qualifications, finding a job wouldn't be difficult, but reality hit me hard. During the interview, the boss threw my resume straight into the trash. Just as I was dejectedly about to leave the construction site, that bald guy Liu Baliang recognized me. Back then, he wanted to join the design institute, but he wasn't selected because his grades weren't good enough. He blamed it all on me. In front of everyone, he used the bridge collapse from 7 years ago to humiliate me. I kept enduring it, but Ma Fei couldn't take it anymore. He suddenly shoved the bald guy, standing up for my dignity. Mick, I felt both touched and bitter inside. That night, I found him under a bridge. Ma Fei questioned me, asking how much dirty money I had actually taken.
Why do so many people collapse? Why does everyone call you the bait? Why do his questions feel like a rusty nail?
He stared hard at my throat. I don't blame him. I know he was just influenced by what people were saying outside. I comforted him, telling him that no matter how noisy the outside world gets, he must always believe in himself. After that, I swore on the Gideon case that I would definitely find out the cause of the accident back then, clear my own name, and give my son an explanation. I always believed that Chow would make it, but a person can't fall. Fortunately, the next day, our luck turned. Liu Bang encountered a problem at the construction site. His men couldn't handle the blasting, and the main trough in front of them was considered too difficult to work on. I felt this was my chance, so I stepped forward and said I could fix it in 2 minutes, asking for 500 yuan. The workers all thought I was asking for way too much and told me off. But to my surprise, team leader Liu said that if I could really solve it, he'd give me 800. I didn't waste any words using the principle of a communicating vessel. I found a water pipe and a pen, and easily solved the problem. Afterwards, although Liu Bang was reluctant, he still gave me the money, and even begged me to stay and help him with the work. Yesterday, he was still acting all high and mighty towards me, but today, his attitude completely changed. Ma Fei, who was standing nearby, looked at me with respect because of my knowledge, and there was a hint of pride in his eyes. I knew this was a kind of encouragement for him. After that, I went to find my former apprentice, Da Tu, who is now a deputy director. He was my favorite apprentice back in the day. He handed me a bunch of keys so I could move back into the Design Institute's dormitory, but on the condition that I designed blueprints for him for free. When I walked into the dorm, the room was covered in dust. It was just like it had been 7 years ago. The globe I made out of a soccer ball was already in tatters. Looking at my son, I felt a sharp pain in my hearth must have endured a lot over these past 7 years. To avoid being noticed by the neighbors, we didn't dare turn on the lights, and could only use candles. Ma Fei lay on the bed, looking dejected. He felt there was no way he could make it into the top 10 in his grade, and didn't want to embarrass me. I told him to forget about that Batai. Didn't care whether he made it into the top 10 or not. What matters is whether his mind is asleep or always working. Have you ever thought about what you want to do when you grow up? Tsinghua or Peking University, right?
Mom says that studying hard is all about getting into Tsinghua or Peking University, but I probably won't make it.
Meeting downstairs. No Tsinghua or Peking Universities. It's the process, not the goal. Okay, so you get into college, then what? Remember, life is like shooting an arrow, and your dreams are like the target. If you can't even find the target, what's the point of drawing your bow every day?
The fire in Ma Fei's heart that was about to go out was rekindled by my words. He asked me which subject he should start making up first, saying that his grades were poor in every subject and that he had copied thoroughly. I took out a textbook and placed it on the table, measured it with a ruler, and told him that from now until the exam, he just needed to study and absorb 0.1 centimeters each day. I also told him he was my genius and that my son could definitely do it. Looking at the determination in my eyes, Ma Fei felt for the first time a genuine urge to study on his own. I allowed him to do anything, on the condition that he take charge of his own affairs. That night, Ma Fei didn't sleep. He pored over his English textbook, while I was writing an application to reopen the case. From that day on, Ma Fei seemed like a different person. He discovered that when he truly settled his mind, those dull bits of knowledge started to become interesting. He was growing taller, and his test scores were also improving. Earlier, when someone wrote to ask about his studies, and whether he was attending any tutoring classes, I replied and lied, saying my son was enrolled in the best tutoring class. Soon, Ma Fei's first exam results came out had moved up from last place to 5th from the bottom. When I found out, I encouraged him, saying that with just a bit of effort, he had heroically claimed 5th from the bottom in the class. If you keep studying like this, you'll become a genius. Originally, Ma Fei felt he hadn't done well on the test, but after my encouragement, his confidence soared, and he even asked if he could buy a computer. But just then, Chen Chi suddenly showed up. It turned out that Director Yan had called him and told him about Ma Fei's recent situation. He accused me of treating Ma Fei like a test subject. He said Ma Fei was already not very bright, and yet I insisted on forcing my own ideas onto him. But he's not stupid at all. I want him to learn not just knowledge, but also how to think and how to find methods. However, he wouldn't listen to a word I said. In tears, he furiously berated me, calling me a madman who had turned the child into this state, and I watched as he angrily smashed things. I felt really awful inside. She thinks that throwing the child into a sea of practice problems is a form of protection, but she can't see the light in his eyes gradually fading away. She's afraid the child will follow in my footsteps, but she doesn't realize that my path was never a wrong one. If a bridge collapses, it can be rebuilt, but if a child's confidence is destroyed, what can possibly restore it? I've been to prison and carry a bad reputation, but what I've taught Ma Fei to believe in himself is more valuable than any acceptance letter from a prestigious school. In order to buy a computer for my son, I went to the black market to sell my blood. I took on all kinds of part-time jobs and odd work. When I finally saved enough money to buy Ma Fei a new computer, he was so happy he almost jumped for joy. But just then, there was a knock at the door. It turned out to be Ma Fei's homeroom teacher, Mr. Gao. He believes Ma Fei has great potential, and this time he came to persuade Ma Fei to return to boarding school. He said there's only half the time left before that bet, and if Ma Fei works hard, there might still be hope. I was very grateful to him, and understood that what he said made sense. But I feel that studying is like steaming buns over and over again. It won't actually make the buns taste any better.
They'll just get flatter and flatter, and harder to swallow. I completely understand the school's requirements, and I also support the need for proper preview and review. But at an age when their ability to learn is at its peak, they're studying until 11 or 12 every night, and doing this for over a decade. Aren't we really worried that the string responsible for learning inside them will eventually lose its elasticity?
That look of weariness in their eyes, can we really not see it? After hearing this, teacher Xiao Gao wavered for the first time about her own teaching methods. On the day of the midterm exam, I took Ma Fei out to the countryside. I wanted him to understand that the most important thing in writing a good essay is to truly experience the world and to write about what you genuinely believe in. We lay on the grass, and I recited the first line of a poem, while Ma Fei followed with the next line from the classical poetry in your Chinese textbooks.
The rain in the streets is as soft as butter, and the grass looks green from a distance but is not there when you get close. Look far away and see a vast expanse of green. But if you look closely, isn't it actually not that green after all?
At that very moment, Ma Fei seemed to understand that the knowledge in textbooks isn't just dry words, they come from real life. But just as we were about to head back for the exam, we ran into a group of troublemakers who tried to stop me. I blocked them and told Ma Fei not to look back, to hurry to school. In the end though, Ma Fei was still late. Director Yan finally found something to use against us. He took the plane I had bought out of Ma Fei's backpack and smashed it to pieces right in front of him, then sternly criticized teacher Xiao Gao at the school assembly. His qualification for regularization was revoked for 3 years. Ma Fei was devastated and wanted to give up on school. Mom, it's not that I'm not trying, but I really don't want to go to school anymore. His voice was soft when he said he didn't want to go to school, but it was like a sharp nail driven straight into my ear. Back when the bridge collapsed, I was called a liar and a criminal, but I was never afraid. Yet now, seeing him hang his head like that, I was scared. I was afraid he would become just another part polished down by the assembly line. Clearly he has wings, yet he thinks he's only fit to crawl on the ground. I'm afraid that one day, when he remembers the dreams of his youth, all he'll be able to do is sigh and say, I was so naive back then. If a steamed bun goes bad, you can re-steam it, but if a person's spirit is steamed dry, it can never rise again. Just then, the door was suddenly shoved open roughly, and those people pointed at me, glaring as if I were their enemy. I couldn't hold back anymore. I stood up and shouted, I won't give in. If you don't believe me, come and try. I won't give in. What do you want? Come at me. My throat burned painfully from the rush of blood, and every word I spoke felt like it was clawed out from the cracks in a prison wall, so close and raw. I wanted this roar to become the very first steel pillar in Morphine's life. Even if I had to use my own backbone as the hammer, I would smash the word surrender out of his dictionary. Because if a bridge collapses, it can be rebuilt. But if a person bends, they truly fall apart. Never say surrender. Early the next morning, Ma Fei wrote a note saying he wanted to be like me and never give up. In that moment, I suddenly felt that all my previous efforts and perseverance had been worth it. After that, I took the documents and went to the Design Institute again to report the problem. The data from the bridge back then was completely inconsistent with the data from my design, but the director always found various excuses to brush me off, passing me around like a football. I grabbed him and pleaded with him earnestly.
I'm begging you, Hiji, please let go of my hand. Let's go! Let go of my hand!
What are you doing? Why are you here? Just to eat and get fat? Get lost. I kept running back to the dorm dozens of times just to prove my innocence, but every time I came back empty-handed. Failing again and again left me feeling discouraged. Just when I was feeling down, Ma Fei stopped me, excitedly wanting to go see the air show. I finally couldn't hold it in and yelled at him, "What's there to see? What kind of messed up advisor is this? Can't you keep an eye on things? Can't you at least get angry for me?" Ma Fei pushed me away sadly and ran off. I was left deeply frustrated and full of self-blame. Not long ago, I was telling him that getting into Tsinghua or Peking University was just part of the journey. So how did I end up becoming the very person I used to dislike the most? Afterwards, I really regretted it and apologized to him, saying that it was my first time learning to be a father too, and that I would make mistakes. In order to fulfill his wish to see the air show, I reached out to teacher Xiao Gao and asked if I could take half a month off for him. Teacher Xiao Gao refused outright, saying it was to prevent Ma Fei from being expelled, and added that this was the most important moment of his life. No, this is not the most important moment of his life, absolutely not. The most important moment should be evenly spread throughout every day, every minute, and every second of his life. With teacher Xiao Gao's help, we still set out for the Space Center. Along the way, we traveled during the day and studied our lessons at night. Ma Fei learned many things that couldn't be found in textbooks. On the last day of the trip, we climbed to the top of a mountain. We experienced the thrill of airplanes flying overhead up close. In that moment, Ma Fei finally realized what he wanted to do in the future. On the bus ride back, I fell into a deep sleep from exhaustion. Ma Fei noticed I hadn't eaten, so he got off midway to make me a bowl of instant noodles. But when he got back on, he boarded the wrong bus. By the time I realized, it was already pouring rain outside. That year was 1998, and a once-in-a-century flood was about to hit. I searched all the way to the shelter, but there was no sign of Ma Fei. Meanwhile, Ma Fei was already surrounded by floodwater. In a panic, I borrowed a loudspeaker and shouted, "If you can hear me, look around you and see if there's anything you can use. Go into your mind, take it out." Take it out just as the alarm for the imminent arrival of the flood sounded again. Helpless, I turned to leave, but then I heard a whistle behind me. A beam of light struggled in the flood. It was Ma Fei. He had made a raft out of a door, used curtains and sheets as ropes, and even found a flashlight and a whistle. He hadn't learned any of this from textbooks. It was me who taught him how to think independently. After returning from the bank, Ma Fei took the final exam. On the day the final grades were announced, Ma Fei's name didn't appear in the top 10 of his grade. He ranked 65 in the whole school. Director Yan said that Ma Fei had made tremendous progress. The rules are rules, and he must take responsibility for his actions. I was ready to accept the outcome and was about to leave with Ma Fei when teacher Xiao Gao stopped us. It turned out that Ma Fei's essay had been given a 0, and he was 21 points short of making the school's top 10. I took the Chinese test paper to find Director Yan. I accepted the 0, but I wanted to read the essay aloud in front of the leadership. Ma Fei's essay was full of imagination, but Director Yan thought it was baffling and utterly absurd. He said that it was entirely reasonable for the committee to give a 0. I didn't argue, I just picked up the test paper and shared my own thoughts. Every multiple choice question. There are 4 options. A, B, C, and D. That's great, but in the future, when they encounter problems in life, will these 4 options automatically appear before them? Knowing A, B, C, and D is important, but what's even more important is that children's answers should also include E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N. No matter how the world changes, if they can think of X, Y, and Z for every problem, our children will be able to take control of their own destiny. Well said. After hearing this, the education committee director agreed and suggested everyone grade the essay. Director Yan and another teacher still gave it 0, while the education committee director gave the essay out of 40 points, a score of 35. After grading, the average score was 22.8 points. Ma Fei not only made the top 10 in his grade, but also stayed at the school. In a few years, Ma Fei's grades kept improving, and now he has a very good chance of becoming this year's top scorer in the college entrance exam. Director Yan took out the prepared photos, pleading with him to give up on becoming a pilot. But Ma Fei replied, "But my father once told me that a person must do what they love." Later, Ma Fei fulfilled his wish and was admitted to become a pilot. My eyes were filled with relief, but there was still regret in my heart, because that collapsed bridge always weighed on me like a heavy stone. In the blink of an eye, 10 years passed, and Ma Fei went from being a pilot to becoming an astronaut. That day, I was eating noodles when I heard a familiar voice behind me. It was Datu. I overheard them talking inside the house, saying that back then, it was Day2 who altered my blueprints in order to get promoted, which led to the collapse of the bridge. The moment I learned the truth, my throat tightened sharply. I wanted to shout, but no sound came out. It turns out the sharpest knife is never the insults from outsiders, but the betrayal handed to you by someone you trust. Furious, I stormed into the house, swinging my fists after more than 20 years of humiliation. I had finally found the real culprit. However, when I told Ma Fei about this, he told me to give up on overturning the case. My leg was already crippled, and even if the case was redressed, there wouldn't be any real compensation.
At most, they'll just restore your reputation. So many years have passed, no one cares about this anymore except you.
Who else cares? Those words stabbed into my heart like a knife. I once thought I had taught him to think independently, to bravely pursue his dreams, to believe in himself and never give up. But it turns out that, in his heart, the dignity of his father and the weight of justice can't compare to the reality of life. Looking at my son in his spacesuit before me, he suddenly felt like a stranger. There was longing for the future in his eyes, but not a trace of understanding for his father. I know he has his own concern. She was just elected to be one of the astronauts going into space. The leaders don't want unnecessary attention brought about because of my situation. But hearing him personally tell me to give up, I can't help but feel deeply disappointed. Only now do I realize that my way of raising him has failed. A complete and utter failure. Ma Fei. Everyone has their own bridge to build, and in my eyes, building your own bridge is the most important thing in the world. I turned away, not daring to let him see my reddened eyes and trembling shoulders, and said to him, "3 will never stand in the way of your bright future, truly. If anyone asks, just say it. Just say." That old man, from the moment he was put in prison. It was only after I said those words that I realized what hurt even more than the bridge collapsing was cutting the last bond between father and son with my own hands. On the day he set out, the seats reserved for family were empty. I knew I shouldn't have shown up, shouldn't have become a flaw in his perfect life, but I still came. Just like when he was little, holding up a flashlight to light up the night sky. I wanted to be the silent light behind him. At the moment the rocket launched, the deafening roar made the ground tremble, and the exhaust flames lit up half the sky. At that moment, he was truly about to ride humanity's greatest spacecraft into space, yet the distance between us felt even greater than the universe itself. And what happened later? The space mission went smoothly, but on the way back, he was struck by space debris. The heat shield tiles on the return capsule lost contact with the ground for a while. If he forced a return, the capsule would instantly ignite upon re-entering the atmosphere. At this critical moment between life and death, Ma Fei thought of that time he was in danger during the flood. He didn't just sit and wait for death instead. He bravely stepped out to repair the base of the main antenna. The oxygen in his suit would only last him 3 minutes. Facing the endless abyss, he overcame his psychological fear and ultimately succeeded in making the repairs, landing safely with another astronaut. After landing, he said to me, "Dad, I'm sorry." It was also my first time learning this. My eldest son's words were like a gentle bullet, hitting the softest part of my heart with perfect precision. It turns out we were both awkwardly learning. I was learning to be an imperfect father, and he was learning to be an imperfect son. And at this moment, "I'm sorry" became the password for reconciliation that time had given us. I patted him on the shoulder. I said to him, "That magic trick was amazing. Can you do it again?" I saw him pause for a moment, then burst into tears with a smile. "This is our secret code," it was what he said to comfort me the day the bridge collapsed. "Dad, how did you do it? Dad, can you show me again?" The thing I'm most proud of in my life isn't how many bridges I've built, but that I built a bridge in my son's heart leading to freedom and courage. I didn't send him to elite tutoring classes, but I taught him how to solve problems on the construction site, using the principle of communicating vessels, taught him survival skills with a door panel during a flood, and taught him to overcome danger in space with just 3 words: find a way. And this kind of survival wisdom, etched deep in our bones, is truly the best tutoring class in the world.